So it's the 21st of September in the US. It's the 22nd here in, is it the 22nd or 23rd here? Anyway, 22nd here in the Philippines. Currently it's Charlie Kirk's funeral ceremony, and I've just been listening to the audience and their, cheers and love for Charlie, the speakers that have so many fond, wonderful things to say about Charlie. The things that have stood out to me, that I identify with, that I feel like I fell way short of my goals, but I was relentless in my outreach for Christians and Christianity when I first found Christ. I was out at Main Street Coffee House in Salt Lake City. My pastor, Clint Roberts, and the team there at Summit Church were very encouraging, very supportive, very kind to me, and I felt a lot of love, a lot of strength given, a lot of forgiveness and kindness for who I was as a person, and I wanted to express that to the world. What Christ gave me through them, I wanted, and not just through them. There were so many at New Horizons Ministries up in Seattle, Chris Magnuson, Liz, Mary, all those, so many, Ron, so many of them up there that reached out to me. Nate Rhodes, who really helped me find answers that I was looking for after I said my prayer and found salvation through Christ. He picked me up hitchhiking in Spokane and mentored me and discipled me, I guess. Anyway, the things that I fell short on is that I had this fervor, and I was good at reaching people. I had my brother going to church with me, my mother, who was Mormon, still Mormon. She still goes to Mormon church. And a lot of my friends, coming to church with me, and I was trying to bring people as like a shepherd to, the Lord. And, for the first 3 or 4 years, I was really effective at that. My wife, around the first month or two that I had met her, she was going to church with her brother. She gave her life to the Lord, was a real fervent Christian, dedicated as well. It wasn't my doing. I mean, I didn't even go to that church. She did that all on her own, ex-wife, that is. And, one thing that, I had given up alcohol, I'd given up marijuana, I'd given up a lot of things. I turned myself in because of Romans 12, and just thinking that I needed to be accountable. I turned myself in for marijuana warrants that, I'd been arrested for marijuana, and I ran from the warrants and went to Washington from Utah. I came back to Utah, turned myself in on those warrants, served 9 months. I was only like 19 years old. I served basically my first year in jail as an adult. Willingly, I just wanted to get it over with and, be accountable and be a good servant to Jesus. And my ex-wife at the time was selling marijuana for her uncle, and had some with her. And when we met, she smoked some with me, and we started that together again after me having had quit for I guess about 5 years. I'd been I've been entirely sober. I didn't even drink alcohol in that entire time that I can recall. Not even, maybe once or twice for dinner, but like I had a beer. Like it wasn't more than a beer. But I can't remember. No, I can definitely remember that I had never gotten drunk. I'd never drank more than a beer that entire time before meeting my ex-wife. And that was, after a lot of partying in my youth, starting at age 8, literally. I started drinking and smoking at age 8. And then, quitting everything cold turkey when I was 19 after finding Christ. And then serving time in jail and everything. Anyway, I was effective at reaching the people who didn't want to be reached to find a relationship with Christ for the first 5 or 6 years. And then I fell by the wayside a bit, distracted by work, lots of relationship issues with my ex-wife, just getting started. And so I would go to YouTube, a lot like Charlie would, and I would have a little podcast. I had Utah Pirate Radio, and I had BehindZionCurtain.com. And you can see it, SLU2COM, that's my handle on YouTube. I went back and forth with Mormons for about 10 years, professors at BYU, apologist at FARMS, as they call it, it's an acronym, FARMS, and they were an apologetic group at BYU, and we went back and forth for about 10 years, and we had some pretty interesting conversations. And one thing, at least for the first, 15 years after I was saved, is that I had a demeanor similar to Charlie Kirk, in that I wasn't going to be pushed. I wasn't going to be, apologetic for my faith. I wasn't going to apologize for loving Christ, and I wasn't going to take any lies and just pacify the people who would lie to me about their faith or about my faith or about Christ. I would confront them directly and sternly, but I did it lovingly, and I never lashed out. And I hosted many radio shows, especially for cannabis legalization, which is something that really distracted me from Christ, although I still used my platform to preach the gospel, which you can see at xcannabis.com. Xcannabis.com actually stood for Christians for Cannabis. So the X for Christians and then cannabis. And, Exodus 30:23 came to mind as far as the cannabis use in the Bible, and the anointing oil of Moses and whatnot. But I tried to reach those who were hard to reach, and that was one avenue I used, was working for cannabis legalization, which I feel was a God-given gift and something that Moses used in Exodus for the anointing oil. Xcannabis.com is no longer active, but Xcannabis on YouTube, on the internet, and on the Internet Archive is all still available. So you can go to the Internet Archive, archive.org, and you can look up my old website, BehindZionCurtain.com. I lost that after owning it for about 23 years, but you can still find all of my old conversations and blogs on there at the Internet Archive. But anyway, I did fall, especially after my accident, and having some trauma, some PTSD issues, side effects of just mostly dealing with my ex-wife. 3 weeks after the accident, she really attacked me in front of everybody, my kids, my in-laws, in my in-laws' living room, and just really, belittled me. And for a private issue, very private issue, something that I was always willing to talk to her about privately, but she took it publicly in front of everybody and really embarrassed me. And for about 7 years after that, was relentless, and was just she was not my friend. It was clear that I had a big settlement for my accident and things, and it was clearly a struggle for power, and there was a lot of PTSD from that directly after the car accident. So here I am in a wheelchair, all kinds of broken bones. My shoulder came off. I had a rotator cuff tear, broke the humerus right in half. I had 42 fractures in my leg. My ankle has 8 titanium screws. My leg has a couple of plates and 7 more screws holding those plates in. And all kinds of other damage. Like I lost my front teeth and everything. Here I am in a wheelchair, and I can't even move. I can't get out of the way. I can't, avoid her. I mean, I just get attacked, and that was the story of my relationship for 7 years after that. And I really turned inwardly, and all of my old friends that I would normally talk to, my friend Paul, who is from Indonesia, lives in California, really good mentor and a friend of mine, my friend Clint Roberts, the pastor from Summit Church, my adopted grandma. When I was homeless as a kid, I moved to Washington State when I was about like 15. That's when I met her. She kind of adopted me, so I always called her Grandma Penny. I started just really ignoring everybody after this car accident because I had so much to internalize and so many issues with emotional trauma, mostly from my ex-wife. I actually filed for divorce 3 times in that period because I mean, I was this close to suicide. I had a gun in my mouth one time, and I took a bunch of Tylenol another time. There was 2 times that I just wanted to get rid of, all of the issues and leave. And if it wasn't for my children, I probably would have. But divorce really settled things for me, and I hate that is the case. I hate that there's so much divorce. I hate there's so many broken children in the world because of divorce, and so much trauma in the world because of divorce. But in my case, it was either divorce or death. I mean, that's really the only 2 options for me at some point in the last 7 years of my relationship, of my marriage to my ex-wife. And so, unfortunately, divorce was the answer. Thank God it wasn't suicide. But, I wish that I was able to be as fervent as Charlie Kirk. I hear about him at Turning Point and, his podcast, and how during his podcast he would write all of the people, the millions of people, that he had watching, but he would have conversations with them. He would always say, hey, send me an email at freedom@turningpointusa.com or whatever, and then he would get those emails, and he would respond to everybody who sent him an email. This is something I learned at the funeral, the memorial they're having for him right now. And I didn't actually know that. Hey, good morning. Hey. So I thought that was impressive, that he had all that time to do his podcast, to travel the world, literally the world, all 50 states and so many countries, probably almost every country, and then his podcast that he did daily, and he was able to still have long, drawn conversations with people who had minor disagreements with him or whatever, and he would have multiple emails back and forth with multiple people daily and still be able to accomplish all that he did in his ministry and in Turning Point, and in the Prove Me Wrong sessions that he would do at college campuses, and he would still have all that time to have personal relationships with people he didn't even know. And that's something I tried to do, and I was still working full time. I got this is probably a blessing and a curse. I got a job as a robotics engineer, as a tier 2 representative of Calist Incorporated, that made me basically work 96 hours a week on the clock, and then time that I didn't even count on the clock. When I was off the clock, I still got pulled into different issues, and that took me away from my family, took me away from ministry, took me away from podcasting, took me away from my friends and family that I would normally speak to. And anyway, so I ended up, after having a really vibrant social life and ministry, to having just me isolated in a room taking phone calls for about 6 years. And then after that, was the car accident, where I just was so depressed and so traumatized that I cut myself off from everybody. And I always loved that Charlie Kirk's out there in the world, not just Charlie himself, but other people, so many ministers and so many people that are out there doing the things that I wanted to be able to be used for by Christ, that they were out there doing those things when I couldn't. And I was so glad, so grateful that those people existed in the world. Nobody compares to the work that, Charlie Kirk was doing. Nobody can hold a candle to that. And his ministry is going to grow. His wife Erica is going to take the helm. And so many people at that, it was a football stadium full of people there in Arizona for his memorial. The president's coming, the vice president, all these, Secretary of State, all this are coming, to remember him and to honor him. And thank God for him. Thank God for him. And I know that, I owe it to my children, I owe it to myself, I owe it to Christ, I owe it to future generations to become stronger, to stop avoiding emails from people or conversations with people or relationships with people in general, and just, get back into taking on my duties as a man, as a person, just as a human in general. I gotta stop avoiding, and I've got to start getting back to who I used to be and who I'm meant to be. Thank you, Charlie, for inspiring that. God bless you. And this whole world needs you, and I'm glad that you and your presence are there through your family and friends and through Turning Point USA. I pray that it continues and it grows like it appears to be. This world is sick. This world needs you. Thank you, Charlie Kirk.